Well, hey there, sweet peas. Welcome back to Friendless. I'm your host, James Avramenko, back once again with a brand new episode. And this week, I have an incredible guest on my show, the one, the only, RJ City. RJ is the host of one of my favorite YouTube shows, Hey EW, as well as a reoccurring presence on All Elite Wrestling. He's a pro wrestler, he's a comedian, and he was an absolutely incredible guest. We talk about mental health and intimacy within the pro wrestling industry and so much more. It was such a pleasure chatting with RJ, and I think you're going to love this one. So lean back, get comfy, and enjoy my interview with RJ City here on Friendless. This week, I have an incredible, just out of the blue guest that I was never expecting to have on. I couldn't be more excited. He is the host of of the show that internally I always call Hey Ew. But he's a pro wrestler. He is a color commentator for AEW, and he's an absolutely incredible just presence on the internet. The one, the only RJ City. How are you doing today?
You know, when you say incredible and then you follow it with it kind of undoes the value of incredible.
I find myself I add a lot of uhs into just my lexicon,
Sure.
so yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, when you say incredible, my body went, huh? And then I had to hang there for a little bit.
It's about suspense. I'm building up the suspense for it, right?
Right. But you could have just, even if you just said he is a host, neutral statement, can't disagree with that.
I feel no neutrality to it. I had to be sure
Right.
I was picking the right term for it.
Thank you.
Of course. RJ, um I'm trying out a new question with you,
Ooh.
just to really see how we can kind of open up this conversation. What is something that is bringing you joy this week?
So little. So little. It's the things that like I cling to. And then I go, are these even bringing me joy? Or are they just not as bad that the things that are upsetting me?
Are there specific? What are the things that you're cleaving to right now?
Well, I'll tell you, I found a this has been a little bit of a journey for me. I, I follow odd things on Instagram, as I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
There is a Bob Hope special from 1988 called the Hope News Network, and I only saw the ad for it, and I sent it to our mutual friend Nug,
Yes.
and I was like, "Oh my god, this looks horrendous. I have to watch it." And I looked it up, could not find it anywhere. And so now I'm intrigued. It seems as if the Bob Hope estate scrubbed most of his more modern specials off
Okay.
the internet. A, because he looks like he's dying, and B, because the jokes are horrible and probably really, really racist.
Yep.
Like Bob Hope's legacy doesn't have enough problems already. And I'm not even a fan of Bob Hope.
Yeah.
But it also had Brooke Shields, Morgan Fairchild, and Yakov Smirnoff, and a comedian weatherman. And I'm like, I gotta see this. I have to see this. I don't
Yes.
care. So I put it out there, and this guy online found it through some internet archive thing and sent it to me. And I, cleared the calendar,
Yes.
hold my
Yeah.
calls. Oh, and sorry, it also has Tony Randall in it. So, as you can imagine, if Tony Randall's in it, I had to run to watch this. And it was so offensive. It was so bad.
Yeah.
Even the good things that I would consider good were just bad. But I enjoyed it so much. But then I have to go back and I go, why did I enjoy that? Probably because when I'm doing my work and I'm doing hay and stuff, the whole time I'm writing, planning at home going, gee, I hope this is good. I hope this goes remotely well. Most of the time, I think the next 3 or 4 interviews I have are all with people who know English as a second language and who might not even be described as fluent in English,
Sure.
and who are still people that I respect immensely.
Yeah.
And I have to get humor out of the situation without insulting them.
Yes.
So it's I think the joy is watching someone like Bob Hope, who's this like titan figure, not be too concerned with any of that.
Right.
Not be burdened by quality, quite frankly.
But do you not find that like having that burden of almost like I would kind of categorize it as something like empathy, like not wanting
Sure.
to just not make a fool of your guest or not
Right.
kind of talk down to them. Is that not a like a burden that's kind of worth taking on, you know?
Yes, and I would push back on the empathy. I don't even know if it's empathy. I also feel like it would not be received well
Yeah,
by people who view it.
that's exactly right. Yeah. Because it
So I
almost
can't
feels
even.
uninteresting, right? Like, why would you
Right.
like? It's kind of been done in a way, right?
Yes. It would be A, easy to do, B, bad to the guest who is trusting me by coming on the show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And three, just not well received. Not certainly not the society we're living in anymore. So I enjoy watching things of a time where I was like, oh my God, this is not an issue at all. And it's also bad. I think that's what I love about it. And I love people who get so successful that they are removed from reality
Right.
and can't tell when they're no longer a success.
Yeah.
Because that's a
Yeah.
fear I have. Not to say that I'm a success, but we have done Wednesday. We will have taped our 100th episode of Hey,
Unreal.
and I feel every episode I feel just as insecure as when I did the first one.
Mm.
So to see somebody who seems totally free of those mental constraints is like porn for me. It's just as unrealistic as porn. Sex
Yeah.
and porn and the reality of my work to Bob Hope's 1988 special is my version of porn.
Yeah. It's funny actually. Something. So I talk many times on the show. I always bring up my therapist Scott. Shout out Scott. He's a great guy. And we talk often about these ideas of like taking these concepts of masculinity, right?
Yeah,
That can so easily get flipped into toxicity. These ideas of like being so confident that you don't allow others' opinions to kind of knock you off your stride or anything like that. And sort of, looking at a figure like Bob Hope and you can see some really good qualities within that presentation, but you can just
sure.
see the easy pitfalls of it, right? You can
Yes.
kind of learn from him, right?
Yes. And I do feel like I've swung so far the other way
Oh, sure, yeah.
because when I read the comments on my work, and I will read largely every comment,
Yep.
and I will say the vast majority of them are very, very good.
Hmm.
Like 95%, which I think is a very high ratio online.
Big time, big time.
And I
Yep.
think that only exists because I'm so critical of myself, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But it's one of those things where the good comments, the best comments, will keep you at a neutral.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not even. So if I read a bad comment, I go down. But when I read a good one, I don't go up equal to the distance that I went down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
not that it's all negative comments, it's that the good comments are sort of useless. I don't even allow myself to experience praise,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
It's a horrible thing to think about. But I also go, and that's just a mental deformity I have in general. If I lose my wallet for 5 minutes, I might have well just have lost it forever
Oh yeah.
because I've put myself through the emotional trauma of I've lived a whole life without a wallet now. And when and then I find it, I don't even experience joy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just go back. And not even that. It's just like, wow, you were an idiot.
Well, that's just it. There's almost like a shame for having been like, when you do find where it is, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, why didn't you look there first? How could you? Right?
Yes.
I was laying on my couch and I lost my remote control. I had not moved in probably 2 hours and it was gone. And of course it was beside me, after
Hmm.
I'd looked for 20 minutes and the shame,
Yeah.
the absolute shame of it.
We rob ourselves of joy
Mm-hmm.
because really, you were that upset about losing the remote that you should have been like, wow,
I can
I
go
found
outside.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It should be like a real Blues Clues moment of we've solved it. We did it, guys.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
found the remote.
Yeah, yeah,
And then it makes us feel worse.
yeah, yeah.
Gee, I wish that remote control stayed gone.
Right,
I
exactly.
wish it actually vanished. That would have been easier to handle.
Yep. I mean, I started going through all the scenarios of like, how do I even turn my TV off without it? Like, do I just
Mm,
unplug it and leave it? Do I even have a TV anymore? Do I just, is this my moment? Do I get rid of my TV finally?
yeah.
Like
And
my
then when
brain
you
starts
find the
just
remote,
spiraling.
but the thing is, those questions are never really answered when you find the
No,
remote. They just
no, of
still
course.
sit in your head.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's
Yeah.
great.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's fabulous. Yeah. Yeah. It's great. Love living with all this anxiety and the neurodivergence. It's just it's fabulous. Fabulous. Yeah.
This to me though is true anxiety because a
Hmm.
lot of people, I somebody ordered a cameo from me the other day and said, "This is for my wife. She has anxiety because she's about to have a baby."
Hmm.
And I said, "I don't think that's anxiety. That's a legitimate concern. Like, I
Yeah.
understand why you're worried. It's
Yep.
another life. A lot of things can go wrong. Like, it's just a normal reaction.
Yeah.
Anxiety is, sitting on your couch and just feeling horrible for no reason."
Yeah. That's a really beautiful little tweak on that too, because yeah, there's yeah, these moments where it's like you're supposed to be worried about this. That's okay. Being a parent is that's a big one. Big
Yeah.
life changes. You're
If
allowed
you
to
didn't feel like that, there would be something wrong with you.
That's the problem. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah. But then we create these scenarios in our brain to just stay worried and just
Right.
um it's like I know for me it's like my nervous system just really likes being like a little bit sweaty. It's
Sure.
like I've just got to be worried about something and then we're okay, right?
So this is the other thing, and I relate it to my work is I do cling to that anxiety, and I guess I do operate based on fear.
Yeah.
I work hard at these things because I'm afraid of them not being good,
Mhm. Mhm.
And as
Yep.
much as I watch Bob Hope and enjoy it, when I sit down and do my work,
Mhm.
in my head, I'm going, you better work on this because
Yeah.
even Bob Hope lost touch. Even he started relaxing, and look what happened to him,
Yeah.
you know?
1980 with Brooke Shields and, and I can't remember the other guys.
Look, Tony Randall was excellent in
Tony
it.
Randall.
Yakov Smirnoff was great. I looked up the comedian weatherman, who
Yeah.
was an actual weatherman and had one appearance on The Tonight Show.
Of course. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so good for
And
him.
well, hey, he's gone farther than I have, right?
Sure,
Right.
especially as a weatherman.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So now that we're a solid 10 minutes in, I for listeners who may not be familiar with you, I obviously gave that stuttering spiel at the start, but
Yes.
but I'm really curious if you could summarize a really simple question of who the hell are you?
It's a wonderful question. I wrestled for a very long time, and I did comedy and acting and writing all at the same time, all together. And then it became quickly apparent over the course of 10 or 11 years of failure that I would do much more work in wrestling without wrestling.
Mm,
So I started doing videos and weird things, and that led to a job with WWE for a year and a half during the pandemic, where I continued to do weird things. And then right after that, I went to AEW, and Tony Khan was nice enough to say, basically, "Hey, whatever you want." So I've been working there for over 2 years now, doing a weekly show called Hey EW. It airs on Sunday mornings on their
mhm.
YouTube, and it's just me and a wrestler for 10 minutes, and nothing planned. And then I also host stuff with the fellow Canadian Renee Paquette. So we
Yes.
host the
Yeah.
wrestling, the pay per view pre shows. We host a bunch of other stuff coming up. We're known as the Wrestle Ants. And in addition, I guess I am just a presence on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your career is so it's fascinating to me and it's so inspirational to me because it's as somebody who is a lifelong wrestling fan but who also doesn't have a I don't have a muscle in my body. Like I am made of softness, and so I just knew wrestling in wrestling was never going to be the direction I could ever go, you know?
Yet, the beautiful thing about wrestling is that you can hide so many weaknesses.
That's very true. That's very,
You
and
don't
especially
have
these
to be
days.
athletic.
That's very true. I wanted to actually ask you about, because there's some things, in your indie days, I was reading about you would sing during your matches.
Yes.
Did that come out of trying to kind of stretch out the match, or was that just trying to showcase something else, or what was the thinking behind that?
I was always like a little show business baby. Like
Yeah.
that
Okay.
was always in me along with the wrestling stuff. And I got very like tired of being the typical bad guy.
Hmm.
This town stinks and you people smell. And this whole thing got old very, very quickly.
Yep.
And when I decided to meld the two, I think someone suggested I just sing my name once, and I did,
Mm,
and they booed. And I thought, wow, there's a whole lane here that no one else is doing, and that I don't know what will happen when I do it. So, like, let's keep going down. And it wasn't just singing, it was
sure.
singing like, you know, the good guys want to give wrestling fans what they want, and the
Yep.
bad guys want to give them the opposite. And to me, the opposite of wrestling would be singing Ethel Merman. I
Right.
think that's pretty fair to say, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So, I would do that and go down that road, and it was fulfilling to me because it was new
Hmm.
and married to sort of my whole world,
Yeah.
which was
Um,
nice. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, I was it just you got me thinking about the number that Chris Jericho and MJF put on a
Yes.
couple years ago. And I was remembering the reaction to that from the internet, and because I remember watching it and just loving it. I was like, this is incredible. I've never seen anything like this. I want this in my wrestling,
Yeah.
did you have any hand in that? Did you have any part in that at all, or no?
No, that was before I got there.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And it was also during the pandemic
That's right.
where it was like, hey guys, let's swing and try anything.
Yeah.
Um, my stuff was a little different where it was like, no, we have all the resources of normal wrestling. Let me purposely waste your time,
Right. Okay. I
you
gotcha. Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was fantastic. And it's one of those things that like opens doors. And I also think about somebody like Tony Storm,
Hmm.
timeless Tony Storm, who
Hmm.
who decided to just change her whole life
Yeah.
and became, of the classic film milieu.
Hmm.
And it's strange and new, but then it opens doors like us collaborating with TCM multiple times.
Yeah.
So it always seems to be worth the risk to try something new.
And especially in wrestling, where it's like,
Yeah,
that's the venue. It's your superheroes. Your comic
right.
books. You're the greatest type of theater on earth.
Yeah,
Like why not just experiment and see what happens?
and I also feel like it deserves more experimentation because I
Hmm.
feel like you're the kind of person who has taken non wrestling people to wrestling shows before.
Oh, all the as so many
Yeah,
times. Yeah, yeah. I'm
I
constantly
also
trying to get people on it.
yes. So I feel like for a non wrestling fan, they go to a
Mm,
show after like 3 matches, they pretty much got it.
yeah.
Like I don't think they'll see that much more else that is outside the concept of what they saw in the first 20 minutes.
Yes. Yep.
Which as someone who has done it for over 10 years bothered me,
Hmm.
right? Not only was I bored after a while doing it, and I
Yeah.
thought
Sure.
it would be very unethical to be bored while doing it. I
Sure.
don't think that was a good idea for anyone.
Yeah.
But there was also that part of me that went, these people have not seen this before.
Mm-hmm.
What will they do?
Mm-hmm.
So that became interesting to me. And
Mm-hmm.
similarly, when I do, hey, I put wrestlers in conversational situations that they probably have not been in before, uh, and it often reveals new sides of them. And by virtue, people have said it makes every wrestler on the show likable just for putting up with my shit.
Well, that's just it. Watching someone like Taz just kind of like lead into it and roll with you, and watching, Eddie Kingston like And what's so fun about it is watching them, you know, kind of be mad, but also stay friendly and stay, just sort of roll with the questions, right?
Right.
It puts them in such a new light and makes you definitely like them more.
Yeah. And I think that's nice. And I think, a lot, I'm speaking very generally, like wrestling needs a little more dimension to it.
Hmm.
So to be able to see these people as real people, but still within the framework of who you know them as, I
Hmm.
think is valuable,
Hmm.
you know?
Was that sort of was that some of the ethos behind the creation of the show? Like, was that sort of the thinking behind coming up with it, or was it just like,
No.
I just want to chat with wrestlers?
So it was Tony Khan's idea. I tweeted about a failed pitch to WWE where I drove wrestlers around,
Yeah.
and he DM'd me and he was like, "Oh my god, do you want to just do this here? And you can do sit down interviews too." And I was like, "Oh," and I had done sort of I had a coffee and underwear thing on my YouTube, and I've had wrestlers
Hmm.
on before, like Eddie Kingston, Steve Austin, and then like I would have David Arquette and Mario Cantone and like a bunch of
Yeah.
weird people. So I was like, "Oh my god, yeah!" And then immediately, we started tweeting back and forth, DMing what those kind of questions were.
Mm.
Like Billy Gunn, tell me how you got your start in the rodeo.
Yeah.
You know, uh,
That was such a good episode.
so and then, but I mean, right away,
Yeah.
I think we both knew that's what this was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we also didn't know, I mean, now doing 100 episodes, I think every different person sort of dictates what's allowed within their episode
Of course.
just because of who they are and what you can do with them. And
Hmm.
I also never tell people how to come on and what to do.
Hmm.
Um, so some people come on exactly how they are on TV, which is insane because we're not on TV. And then some people come on as another version of themselves, which
Yeah.
is great. I feel like it's a little sandbox away from, the main stuff. And it's just nice
Hmm.
to see people play around.
That's right. That's right. Well, and I think that I know for me as a fan, for sure, that's one of the elements that makes me respond to it so much. And I actually have a little bit deeper. I want to talk about this, but I'll dog ear that for a second. You know, in the show, I think what I'm looking for right now in wrestling is the ability to, see them on TV and then also get these other angles and see how these wrestlers respond to these new situations,
Yeah.
someone like Eddie Kingston. I keep on coming back to him because he's my favorite. He's my I love him so much. And just watching how he interacts with you versus how he interacts with his opponent or anything like that versus what
Right.
he then like tweets about or Instagrams about, and I think there's a value in um towing the line of the character versus reality, but not necessarily holding it rigidly, but having it be a little flexible, right?
Yeah, well, I guess you want fully developed characters.
That's exactly yeah, that's a great
Like,
summation of it. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's often been the problem with wrestling over the past, I don't know, since the 90s,
Mhm.
maybe, is that you have this, I don't know, you have this inability to see how they fit into the modern world,
Mm. Mhm.
So when they can do that and they can be their characters, and maybe the answer is they're their characters because they're not really characters,
Yeah. Right?
right?
Yeah.
But some people, yes, some people, no. Uh,
Mhm.
I guess it depends, and there's some people will never know the answer.
Yeah.
Some people,
Right?
I go, "What are they like when they go home?" I have no idea, and I'll never know, and I'm fine with
Yeah.
that, you
Yeah.
know. Um, so yeah, but it is nice to, especially AW feels a little more adult, and I don't mean
Mhm.
adult in like sex and drugs and violence way, but
Yeah.
a little more sophisticated,
Mhm.
and they seem to have a little more depth to their characters.
Mhm.
And I
There's
mean,
nuance.
there's nuance, but then there's also somebody like Orange Cassidy,
Yeah. Which I would
which,
argue is there's tons of nuance too, though.
right, but
Like,
there's
yeah.
also insanity,
Yes. Yeah.
right? It's totally ridiculous, but then there's depth to the ridiculousness,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
you know, just like anything. I mean, why do I buy into characters from Sesame Street or Sam the
Mhm.
American Eagle.
Mhm. Mhm.
I buy into the depth of Sam. Like, why am I still watching Sam the American Eagle?
Mhm.
For over 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Because
some level of depth.
there's I'm blanking out. I went to theater school, and I'm sure all my
Yes.
teachers, if they were listening, would be screaming at me right now. But there's a term for, like, for exactly that. You're buying in, and I think that it's when you establish it, it's not logic, but it's like you establish what the rules are, and the rules can be whatever you want them to be. But as long as you establish the rules and then play by the rules, we'll come along with you. You know,
Yes,
so
you
something
have
like
to.
Orange Cassidy, he sets up these rules, but which are absurd but logical from the character standpoint, right? So you're like, yeah, I'm in. We get the kicks, we get the pockets.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing with every kind of character everywhere. Again, I go
Hmm.
back to Blue's Clues. Pretty
Exactly.
pretty clear rules.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, pretty clear, like, yes and no stuff.
Hmm.
Like, this is how this world operates. When you have to build a universe, then you have to play by those rules. And a lot of times, and I feel like you must have dealt with this when you bring non-wrestling fans and you ask them to watch wrestling. There are gaps in logic that are embarrassing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And they go, I don't understand. Why is this like this? If you said it was like this, and you're like, well, because this is bad.
Yeah, yeah, someone fucked up, yeah.
Right. And also, I mean, and it is the hard thing, and it's sort of just like stand up. 85% of all wrestling is probably bad.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm talking about I don't know, there's millions of indie shows
Yeah,
and wrestlers trying, and I don't mean that they're bad or that they should stop wrestling. I mean,
yeah.
it's very hard to be good at it.
Yes, yeah.
Um, so it's stuff that everyone should think about. And it's stuff that I feel like it's a non-fan when they see those gaps, that's when they check out and that's how they don't become fans.
Yeah.
And similarly, if I'm watching a movie and there's a huge gap in the logic, I'm out.
Mhm,
You've really lost me.
mhm.
So,
It's the struggle of getting people to theater, right? Is that it's
yeah,
like, somebody goes to see a play once a year. If that play sucks, they're not going back, And
exactly.
so you gotta maintain, an excellence,
Yes.
which isn't necessarily fair to the artist in a certain way, where it's like artists should be allowed to suck and not have to worry about, you know, not eating the next day. And at the same time
Right.
too, like, there's a balance to it, right?
Sure. And they could also
You
have
know?
regular jobs and play
Yes.
guitar on the side too.
That's exactly it. That's exactly
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Yeah. That's just it. It's a two-way street, right?
Yeah.
We're dancing up on something that I'm really curious about your perspective on. You know, talking about someone like Eddie Kingston, Will Ospreay has been talking very openly about, about his ADHD, and a lot of these wrestlers these days are talking much more openly about their mental health, and
Mm.
that seems to be really kind of pervading the conversation a lot more than we've ever seen before. At the same time, too, we're seeing wrestlers working at a higher caliber for longer than ever before. At a healthier. You look at Chris Jericho, Billy Gunn. They're continued to work, and they're continued to be healthy for longer. And I'm really curious how you've kind of observed those culture shifts. Like how they've come into play, and how you see them being received by the rest of the insiders, the rest of the wrestlers.
I I mean, I think it's a much healthier way to be
Mhm.
because saw a lot of alpha males when I started and before I started to
Mhm.
try to keep up that appearance, and it's very destructive, and often, let's be frank, led to a lot of them dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it
Exactly.
was yeah, it's really dangerous, you
Mhm.
know? And there are some people I dealt with where I'm like, "Gee," I mean, I had some very long talks with Roddy Piper
Mm.
where you feel so bad for him, where you go, "Gee, this is a person who did not get the love he needed
Yeah.
growing up, and even through all his success is a weight that he carries around with him
Mhm.
forever, his whole life. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy, 2 or 3 years before he passed away, talking about um, how the holds he still had from that. And I think
Mhm.
it's enough. I don't know. We people have lived long enough to go, yeah, that's not the best way to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, it is very endearing culturally now, I think, to share that information. It's important, number one.
Mhm.
Even when I share it in I would say I built my anxiety into my act,
Right.
in a
Yeah.
sense that I don't come out straight and go, I have anxiety, is blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I'd rather experience it
Yeah.
and make it part of I would rather play around with it, but I still have people going, thank you for bringing that up, and thank you
Mhm.
for saying that. It makes me feel better about mine, and it's a. I hate that we only use dog whistles for racism.
That's such a good way of putting it.
Yeah,
Thank you
because
for
if I
that.
said dog whistle, you automatically think
Yeah.
it's bad,
Yeah.
and I'm saying
Yeah.
something bad about an
You'd be like, "Well,
ethnicity.
that's the show. Thanks, everyone."
Right,
You know,
right.
right? Yeah.
But I think it is a dog whistle where you say it, and then you
Mhm.
have people will come up to you afterwards,
Yeah.
you know, and talk about it. And I also think, and back to the whole of wrestling, we have to go there because we've already done the tough guy shit.
Yeah.
It's a little played out,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, and it's not either or. Obviously, I think we've been through enough as a society. It was and especially with not only the pandemic, but just the amount of time we're spending online,
Mhm.
talking to each other. We've run out of other things to talk about.
That's a good way of putting it too. That's an interesting, like I've been thinking a lot about like what has shifted in the culture to get us to talking about these things and why is it becoming more prevalent now? And obviously I think part of it is we're just waking up to our own personal experiences and realizing what's going on. But it's like where are these conversations starting? And yeah, I think when you're sitting alone all day for 2 years straight, you know, you run
Yeah,
out of the small talk, right?
and there's a big component where it also makes a lot of money too.
Mm.
There was a bunch of horrible self help books I read
Mm-hmm.
where I
All
went,
the fuck books I call them,
yeah,
the unfuck your brain and all those fucking books.
what
Yeah,
is with these people?
yeah, yeah.
And went through a period of desperation years
Of
and years
course.
and years ago, and then you're just like, oh well, these books are out there. I'm gonna trust fall into these books. Then you
Yeah,
get to the end of them, and you're like, that's it? How dare you put your name on this? You're gonna be ashamed of yourselves.
yeah,
How do you
yeah,
people walk around like this?
yeah.
So I have a problem with you know shallow positivity.
Mm-hmm.
That really bothers me. It seems very dishonest,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and not genuine. And I also don't think there's anything wrong with being upset or identifying things you don't like.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, and it gives me great joy to do.
Yes. Well, when you
Um,
start leaning into, like, when you start recognizing that every feeling has the exact same level of value,
right.
like any emotion is just an emotion. And so some are more uncomfortable in your body than others, but none as better or worse. There's no good bad, right?
Well,
So,
this was this. I think the conclusion I came to after that stack of literature was discarded
Yeah.
was that happiness is a stimulation. It's
Mhm.
not a state of being. So
Mhm.
I'm happy to eat the cotton candy, but it will literally disintegrate in my mouth, and then the happiness will be gone.
Yep.
So for me to chase it as a state will always be unfulfilling.
Hmm.
So I try to now go for peace,
Yeah. Yeah.
where I'm essentially, whether I feel good or not, it doesn't prevent me from getting the things done that I need to get done.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I said this in that cameo to the pregnant woman. I did it today. What a good example. And I said, you know, gee, wouldn't it be better if we were more like cows and we could just be hungry and
Yep.
not feel good or bad about feeling hungry? Like, what is this extra feeling? Like,
Yeah.
I don't need this.
Yeah.
at all. And it's judgment and it's humanity, and because we can judge and my cat can't judge and whatever. But like, we need to like admire the cows a little, I
Hmm.
think.
To just be, I've talked about it in recent episodes about this idea of like the pursuit of mediocrity, right? In terms of just like not wanting to be great, not wanting to be terrible, just wanting to be good enough,
Yeah.
and just be completely medium,
I just watched today because I was making a joke about it. I wanted to reference it, and I hadn't seen it in forever. The ending of the movie Amadeus,
Okay, okay.
and F. Murray Abraham says, he's lost his mind, and he says
Yeah.
he's the patron saint of mediocrity.
Uh,
And he passes, and the priest he talked to was, of course, totally rattled because
yeah.
it never occurred to him that he's mediocre,
Yes.
and he's going down the hall absolving all these crazy people, and it's the best.
Yeah.
There is like I mean, look, he's gone crazy, and that's the whole point. But there's a joy in his acceptance of who he is.
Yes.
There's a
Yeah.
freedom in it that he stopped
Yeah.
struggling against it.
Oh, I gotta go back and watch. I haven't watched that in a couple of years. That's
I
because I can picture the scene, but
Yeah,
I feel like I've only ever watched it from the light of like, oh, how sad, and it's like I think now that I've been through all the therapy and I'm on new medication, I feel like I would see that scene from a different angle.
yes, absolutely. And I also think, especially in my line of work, uh, you get to adjust. And then there's the other thing with wrestling is that, like, as a child, I bought into this messaging of what it
Yes.
takes to be a wrestler and what they should be like. And, I bought it. I drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And the second half of my life has been coming to terms with, like, that was just messaging from some people in an office and was not
Yeah.
indicative of the truth at all.
Yeah.
And these people you put on a pedestal are just not any different than you. It's not even to say they're good or bad.
Yeah.
They're just like, meh, they're people. I'm
Yeah.
also a person.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. They just happen to
Um,
do something a little different with their day than you, you know?
yeah, basically, they just happen to be in certain positions. And you're like, all
Yeah.
right, great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in one sense, that's horrifying
Yeah.
because your body goes, well, what if but we've been working towards this.
Yeah.
And then in the other sense, it's freeing
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and prevents me from achieving those things and still being unfulfilled, which I feel like happens to people a lot.
Right. Like you mean like still getting those dreams, but then not feeling satisfied with it.
Right. And I,
Yeah.
I often look back and I go, gee, imagine if I was able to follow the path I initially set out. The real
Right.
A to B to C, the traditional, this is what you have to do to be successful in wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine how on one hand, some things would have been better, probably would have
Sure.
made more money earlier in my life and
Sure.
certain things like that, and have been less. I don't know if I would have been less frustrated. I just would have been frustrated in a different way. But I go, imagine how bored I would have been.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we wouldn't have AEW,
You wouldn't
So
have a weekly waste of time.
hey, it's important to me, okay?
Good. That doesn't say anything good about you.
No, I was gonna say, which
Yeah.
is actually really sad,
Yeah. I love that. Oh, my wife is a fan of yours. I'm like,
Yeah.
why?
Why? Yeah, tell her to, get better hobbies, right? Yeah.
Yes. It's a world of other books.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I want to flip into like, so the real core of this show, it started as this gimmick of I was
Yeah, I read the CBC article. I got the gist.
okay,
Yeah,
there you
yeah,
go.
this whole thing. Yeah,
So you know the whole
yes,
unfriending part. I've since ditched all that.
right,
It's now just this exploration of connection and friendship and
right.
all these circling questions. And
However, I need to go back to, and I know you've evolved beyond the original premise,
yeah.
but it did get me thinking about my own.
Oh
And
yeah.
I I have Facebook because there are plenty of people that I don't particularly care for,
Sure.
yet I enjoy seeing what they're up to.
See, I'm the opposite. I'm someone who I cannot I can't be reminded of them. I have no object permanence, so I need to just like not see them so I can forget them.
Right.
And so yeah, that like it's almost like the Schadenfreude,
Mhm.
that like the joy and the pain. I It just stresses me out when I see that, So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a net positive on my life, but it's something that I'm often compelled to do. It's
Yes.
probably a
Yeah.
vice I have to be like,
Sure.
can I find my old French teacher from grade school
Yeah. Yeah.
who, and this is a weird one where I went, she was we were too young to realize she was attractive.
Right. Right. Okay.
And then we all got older. My friends, by the time we got to high school, we went, that was probably the most beautiful woman we've ever seen in our lives.
Right.
She
Yeah.
was just incredible, but we were too young. You're just like,
Yeah.
the concept
Yeah.
of woman doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And then I had to find her, just know what she was up to. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
fascinating. And she's
Yeah.
all up into this weird conspiracy theory
Of
business. And I'm like,
course. Yeah.
but you just need to know. That's not
Yeah.
it doesn't add anything into my life,
Yeah, yeah.
really.
Well, and that's the thing is that I think that was the part that was an element of what kind of stopped me. Like, it's an element of why I stopped that part of it was that I realized I was losing connections that while I had no intention on maintaining them, I also didn't want to completely sever them. Right, like
Right.
because it did become the last place I would have a connection to people like that. My high school dance teacher, stuff like
Yeah.
that, where it's like it feels a little mean to unfriend you without an interview, but you're also never going to be on this show, so I think we'll just quietly, let
Yes,
let it
which is
slip away, right?
fascinating. Now I have Facebook. My mother will often, she has one, but she doesn't have anyone on it. She just
Mhm.
wants to look at people on mine,
Right.
which is probably tells you that it's genetic.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Um, which, what are you gonna do? But
Yep.
it is so funny because I would consider like blocking someone or unfriending someone like the height of tragedy for me.
Mm,
I would be
mhm.
so offended. And there are so many people I've dealt with personally and professionally that have done horrible things to me. And yet I would not do that.
Mm. That takes a kind of resilience that I am working towards, Like, I'm not that's a next tier of my
I don't even know
therapy.
if it's resilience because I don't think it's a healthy thing to do.
I guess maybe there. Yeah, I guess I mean, dialectics. It could
Yeah,
be both. It could be both, right? But because I'm in the side where I'm like, I need. It's more about. It's less about me seeing them, and it's more about like I need them to never see me again.
right,
Like I need to remove any chance for them to spy on me, so that when they do catch a glimpse, I'm doing that much better. Right?
right. And
It's
that's like,
yeah.
I feel like I am a neurotic narcissist where I go, everything's wrong and it's my fault.
Yep. Yep.
That's the only way it can be in my head. So when I
Yep.
hear the other perspective of of why you unfriended people, like this thing goes off in my brain. I'm like, I never even thought of that before.
Right. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
idea that someone could have their own decisions that
Right.
weren't necessarily malicious about me being the worst person in the world is like,
Yep.
oh, it's such a relief.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my god. Ooh, yeah. The internal narrative of how it's always my fault is that feels like yeah, I feel that deep in every part of my body.
Yeah,
you know?
it's incredible. It's a
Oh
real
yeah.
particular feeling.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. It's kinetic. Yeah.
I will also say, as great as friends are, I love the stranger so much. And
Yes.
I get to go to very small towns. I mean, I travel every week, at least once a week.
Yeah.
This week we're in Edmonton. Tomorrow I'm in Edmonton, and then maybe Vancouver. And then after that, we're in Seattle, somewhere near Seattle, something. Most of the time, I don't even know where I am. But I love going to these places and then being able to walk outside or go to like a weird museum or go
Mhm.
to an antique store and see people living their lives that I would not know existed otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's okay. So like, so this root question of like, what does it mean to be a friend? I think you're like extrapolating something that I think I've scratched around at times and have never fully like tapped into. And I'd like you to expand a little more because you're getting me thinking about like I really value the like stranger conversation, and I've never been able to figure out exactly why. And there's part of me thinking that it's like there's a type of safety in the anonymity that it brings, in that there's no backstory, right?
Yes.
There's no history, so you're not like, well, last time you said this. It's like fresh, you know.
Yeah.
But there's something more to it, and I'm wondering, yeah, I'm wondering if you could say a little more about like what is it for you that you like connecting with strangers so much.
Well, there's two things, and I wouldn't even say I'm connecting with them.
Mm.
I like observing them and going, this person is living their whole life without the knowledge of me. And it's
Yeah.
great. It's like, see, like the more people you see out there, it feels like, there's plenty of fish in the sea. It sort of feels like that, going like, this is okay. Like, because obviously, my work hinges on the approval of other people right now.
Sure. Yeah.
So to see people, and I love people who work at museums. I look at
Yeah.
them like they're monks, just like these little whatever town in like West Virginia, the West Virginia State Museum,
Yeah.
the woman punching tickets. I'm like, you were the best. You are like all I'm clinging to right now. The
Well, they're usually
idea that,
volunteers too, right? Like they're almost
right,
always volunteer.
yes, the idea that you could just, if all else fails, I could do this.
Yeah.
I think is what it is. But then there's a very bad thing. It's not a bad thing that happened. It's a great thing, but it's weird. So I went to Longo's, the supermarket Longo's. Are you familiar?
I'm not. I've never
Okay.
heard of it.
It's like Loblaws or any
Okay.
supermarket. And I'm checking out, and this guy ran over to me who works there, and he's like, "RJ City." I'm like, "Yeah, oh, big fan, AEW, love AEW." He's like, "Can you hang on 1 second? I got another guy in the back. He's a huge wrestling fan." I'm like, "Of course, why would I was happy to
Yeah.
say hello and you know." So then I talked to the guy, and then the guy said, if you're ever here, and we're in the meat department, we're happy to hook you up. I don't know what that meant. I don't know. I don't know what great meats they're keeping from the public. Uh,
Just give you a
but
slab of cold cuts, you know?
yes, but then there's a part of me that went, I can never come here again,
Yeah. Right.
because I entered that environment thinking nobody knew who I was and just judged me on what I was doing in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
and being very unassuming, and you know and now I run into these people and I have to be who they think I am,
Yes. Yeah.
and that's
Mhm.
and not that they're bad people, and they're great, and I'm thrilled to break out of the mold of like, oh my god, I could get recognized at the grocery store.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
This is great. But now I'm like, oh god, now I gotta find another grocery store where they don't know
Yeah.
who I am, so I can show up there dressed like a bag of shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Which is such a funny, like it's so fascinating that it's like, and you've almost flipped the blame onto yourself again, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like I'm like, they clearly didn't give a shit what you were wearing. They didn't expect you to be in character, but you're putting that pressure on yourself because of the recognition, right? And
Yes.
you know, oh man, yeah. But I understand that. Like, I mean, look, I've never been recognized in a grocery store before, but I can totally understand the need for anonymity, and when that gets broken, it's like there's like a just a tired feeling that comes over.
Yeah, I mean, the air changes.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't even say, the anonymity. Let's say it together. Anom
Anonymity.
Anonymity. There we go.
Got
The
it.
M came in too early for me. Um, I hate to present it like,
Of
oh,
course.
please, I need
Yeah.
my privacy. But it is just like a really interesting, like, you know, Oh, gee, I thought these people were not judging me, and now they are.
Yeah.
And even though it's
Yeah.
a great judgment, I think it's just about being judged. I don't
Yes.
want people thinking about me.
Yeah. Well, it's that thing of it's the desire for the benign, right? It's the
Right.
desire for the medium of like
Yeah.
neither good or bad, just be completely down the middle, the what are they the middle path, right?
Right.
you know?
So when I go to the museum, I go, no one knows who you are. And that is amazing.
Yeah.
You don't even have to worry about it. That's outstanding. And even when we go to like, so Edmonton, AEW will really descend on Edmonton.
Sure.
Probably 100 wrestlers and crew and staff and all the people who work there.
Yeah.
And it is also like, hey, make sure you're on your best behavior
Sure.
because for you talking about stuff going on in the Uber, you don't know if they're a wrestling fan or if they,
Mhm.
whatever. So it does come with that expectation
Mm.
when people know your business.
Mhm.
Um, it is just very, very strange. So I do, and I also feel like, well, this is a weird thing too. Socially, my work is social,
Yeah.
so I have a very limited need to socialize when I'm not working anymore.
Mhm.
So I feel like my friendships have changed. Not, I mean, my friends haven't been different, but my relationships to my friend, what I need from my friends is different now.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
What is it that you find yourself wanting from those kind of like out of the industry old connections like that?
um, uh, just the like to respect the space and the fact that I can have no capacity to do stuff
Yeah, sure.
anymore. I mean, it
Yeah.
it does get very busy and it gets very involved, and I'm just socializing, and then, I mean, not that I'm socializing, but
You're
doing
using your
hey is like
brain.
a 10-20 minute conversation with somebody that I've been
Mhm.
working on, and then you're talking about how we're filming it, how we're not, and then I do
Mhm.
stuff with Renee and I do stuff with different wrestlers, and then it's like when I come home, the last thing I want to do is speak to anyone because I
Yeah.
need to recharge that battery. How anyone can go out after is like, I want to be
Yep.
completely alone.
Mhm.
No friends, no family, like totally, totally alone.
Yeah.
That's what I need. So I need friends who are able to like understand that and maybe don't get offended if I don't reciprocate. Having said that, I mean, I will see people, but I've reduced my going out ability greatly, or
Yep.
else I'd lose my mind, and I
Mhm.
would be exhausted all the time.
Mhm. I mean, that's how I balance my life. Anytime I have like a really good big social day, I always plan the next day to be comatose. Like I will be just like an invalid on my couch in silence, and that's just how I live my life, just the back and forth,
Yeah,
cuz yeah. No, cuz that's the thing, you're talking about like your job is social. It's that it's like you're using your brain. Just talking to people takes up capacity, you're
yeah,
using that muscle, right? And
yes. The same way you
uh
wouldn't train legs and then train legs the next day.
exactly. Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
Speaking to the broader idea of like the community, like you have this experience within the wrestling community. And I'm really curious how that's colored your sort of internal definition of a word like community. Like what does that sort of term define within you?
it means something neutral. It
Sure.
doesn't mean something that's good or bad. I mean, I normally understand that people use the word to mean something good.
Yeah.
Not necessarily true. I feel like it's people who just have a shared understanding or beliefs, not even necessarily that they agree with them. Is that it's
Hmm.
just that there's a common one between them.
Hmm.
We don't know how they feel about it. Like obviously the wrestling community has a million different opinions on everything,
Yep.
but they're coming from a shared perspective and they're at least watching something the same, and they're all understanding that they're watching it, and they're you know we, it is hard to say what community it does. It just feels like a real neutral statement to me.
Yeah.
It can be good, it can be bad. I mean, for me it's good. I guess, the wrestling community, because they're supporting my work.
Sure.
If they didn't exist, I would not have a job. But I'm also a part of it. I also came from it,
Hmm.
and then you have a different relationship with it all the time.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not.
I think the way you're framing the idea of like the shared, almost like the shared goal in a way, but with allowing all these other ideas and thoughts and opinions. I think that's what I've been scratching at with this term community, because to me it feels like such a bizarre, it's one of those words where you think you understand it and then you stop and think about it for a second and it can mean a million different things,
Yes, and
and
so to that end, I feel like it is misused, and I
mhm,
think it's a good of you to ask what it means to me, because
right.
people will just use it
Yes.
blindly, and just think it means a group of supportive people, and
Mhm.
it does not. Like, the people on
Mhm.
my street are in one sense a community. I wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily call them supportive people,
Yeah.
right? We
Yep.
just have a
Yep.
shared understanding that we live on the same street.
Mhm. Mhm.
um, and that the condo board does not allow satellites on the side of the building. Like, that is our shared understanding.
Yeah.
What difference does that make?
Yeah. Yeah.
These are not good or bad people.
Yeah.
These are just weird rules.
But it is a
Um,
community.
but then, I being with wrestlers are their own community within the community, and it's
Mhm.
very tight and private, and exists in
Mhm.
a way that I don't know if I would ever exist with any other people. Um,
Mhm.
and I think about, because when you in the descriptions of everything, you use the word intimacy a lot.
Mhm.
And the weird thing about wrestling is the physical intimacy.
Absolutely.
Uh, and these people that I am physically intimate with, who I've never met before,
Mhm.
physically intimate in a way that I would not be intimate with even if I had sex with them.
Yeah.
That's very, very intimate.
Yep.
And it's the name of the game is this intimacy.
Mhm.
uh and it's a physical intimacy, but it's non-sexual, and people have difficulty dealing with that
Yep.
in
Yep.
different ways. This is fine. But I remember when I first started training, and I had someone else's BO on my shoulder.
Mhm.
What the fuck? Like, think about that. Smelling it and going, that's not mine, but that's deep within another person.
Yeah. That's a level of intimacy right there. Yeah.
Yes, and but also someone I'm not friends with.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I
It's
mean, intimacy
incredibly
can also
strange.
be assaulting, right?
Sure.
Right.
Yes. And it is like, gee, if I went to like a wrestling school that had a class on right now, and
Mhm.
I got in the ring, I would immediately lock up with someone I didn't know, and I would not think about it at all.
Mhm.
That would not be an issue to me.
Mhm.
It's that's a certain sense of community, because we have that understanding. And just
Mhm.
based on that understanding, it's a certain bond that I really don't think I have with anyone else.
Yeah.
Just because we like wrestling,
Yeah.
you know, I wouldn't, I couldn't do that with anyone. I mean, maybe comedians in a certain sense when they get physical, but that's not all the time.
Yeah.
You know, uh, wrestlers get physical in a way that maybe even in certain sports. I'm trying to think. You don't get that physical because it's competitive.
Yeah.
And the idea is sort of not to be physical, of just
Yeah.
that physical enough that you can beat them. And
Mhm.
wrestling is totally different. Maybe dance.
Well, and I've always seen wrestling as a dance.
Yeah.
I've seen it as it's choreography and it's gorgeous. When and I'm sitting here. You're the way you're framing it is like spider webbing my brain in so many different directions, because it's just such a beautiful reframe of the way wrestling works, and it
Yeah.
and it and I didn't think I could respect wrestlers more. And you know
And it is funny to look back on my relationships with wrestlers who I'm not wrestling with right now,
yeah,
and we are still like physically intimate,
yeah,
because it's just with that seal has been broken.
yep,
So even when we're joking around and talking about whatever, we'll touch each other
yep,
or do bits like, I like to do a mafia. I do an extended bit of like a mafia guy who, you ever see when they threaten someone but they fix their clothing at the same time? They'll like straighten the guy's tie and like brush it over his shoulder and be like, you owe me 10 grand. I do that extended bit, and then it's just two men grooming each other while threatening each other is the bit. But it's a thing that I can immediately do with, a wrestler who I'm probably not that good of a friend with.
Mm.
Meaning I'm able to do it with him because he's a wrestler, but someone who's not a wrestler that I'm at the same level of friendship with, I probably couldn't do it with.
Yeah. There's just that physical agreement that you're talking about, because I
Yeah,
mean, and that's something that I think, as a non wrestler and as somebody who hangs out with mostly non wrestlers,
sure.
you know, that's how I spend my day, right? Is is this uh observation of like a desire for touch. I think a lot of people are really touch starved,
Sure.
but there's a fear because there's like, there's this sort of social pressure of like, if you're touching someone, either their family or you're trying to fuck them,
Right.
like, and that's basically it, and so you're sort of not allowed in so many scenarios to just like touch your friends or even touch strangers or anything
Yeah.
like that, right?
Yes.
um
My grandmother was a big, if she would laugh, if she had shared a joke with a stranger, when she would laugh, she would grab their wrist,
Yeah, yeah,
and she never thought about it, but I'm of the age of like, don't touch
right.
people. Like, just don't
Exactly.
leave them, you're grabbing their wrist. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Um, Roddy Piper and I had a talk about the male intimacy
Mm,
and how it's important for wrestlers,
mhm,
uh, especially when we're trying to communicate how personal these issues are,
mhm,
and how intense they are and how emotional they are and how physical they are. And to do that, you really have to get into someone else's space.
mhm.
And if you are, emulating a fight, uh, if you've ever seen, a bar fight or something of that level, they're absolutely in each other's space.
Yeah.
They completely break that social space. They're in each other's circle.
Mhm.
So it's something that you have to go in to communicate what you need to communicate. And also, and it's the funniest thing is just like the fear of it being gay.
Yeah.
It's so funny. And I do remember reading some sort of university book thing. I read when I was in university, I read every academic thing on wrestling. There was
Yeah.
not that much of it.
Yeah. I took a
Uh,
whole class. I took a pro wrestling as theater class in university. It was
oh my
amazing.
God.
Yeah.
I would love to come and correct everything and go, honestly, they weren't intending on it.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is not the struggle of man. Believe me, these are two guys who are just trying not to fall down because their backs are hurting. That's it. It's not an allegory for anything.
Yeah.
He's a common man because he likes wearing jeans. There's no significance here. Let it go, guys. Um, no, I enjoyed that. There was always this stereotypical flamboyant gay character.
Mhm.
The Gorgeous George and
Yeah.
Adrian Adonis and Goldust, and and the function of it when it was ridiculed,
Mhm.
when they were bad guys, was for the audience to say that's gay. So what
Yeah.
we're doing is not gay.
Right.
We promise. That's the gay guy.
Yeah.
You see that? That's the difference. This thing, we promise, because it's so weird.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, I guess it is so weird to be that close to someone and not be sexual.
Yeah. Yeah. In most scenarios,
Yeah,
but that's those people missing out, you know?
yeah, yeah. I think it would be, and it is. It is, but there are certain non wrestling friends. Well, I will also David Arquette,
Mhm.
who I'm friends with, who wrestles, who did wrestle.
Yeah.
I think grew to understand that bond. And he's a touchy person. He's a person who will hug you and say he loves you. And I think
Yeah.
he understood the physical intimacy immediately.
Yeah.
I think he understood the need for it, you know, um, and then he understood how to relate to different people using that.
Hmm.
So it's very interesting. Yeah, it does come up in acting, not all the time,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
you do
but
your touching warm-ups, and then that's about it,
yes,
you know? Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and it's just like a physical commitment.
Mhm.
As much as you're invading their space, you're also letting them invade your space.
Mhm.
You know, it's a whole weird thing. And that's also, to me, I think the more I understand that, the more I understand like the breakdown of the alpha male archetype in wrestling. So I'm like, guys, this is, for lack of a better term, guys, this is very gay.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to let that go.
Yeah.
I think we
It's
need to accept it.
but it's what
Yeah.
rules about wrestling is that it is pretty
Yes.
gay, you know?
Yes.
It's like, yeah, lean into it. Come on, boys, kiss,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes. And I think the acceptance of that from the heterosexual perspective
Sure,
opened a
sure.
lot of doors of the different kinds of depth that wrestlers can be,
Mhm.
you know. And now you have a lot of angles of guys who are best friends, explicitly best
Mhm.
friends, and the friendships falling apart and that sort
Yep,
of that emotional drama. And it does. It's
yep.
great that it leads to new characters and new stories,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
and just new understandings. I feel like AW, especially, is fairly progressive,
Yeah.
at least by wrestling standards.
Well, that's just it. It can, we can only go as far as we could go, and it's
Right.
like, and they've definitely pushed it a lot further than it was,
Yeah.
5, 6 years ago even, right?
And I also think that has to do with, it's a business that's predicated on mass appeal.
Yeah.
So when
Yep.
you have the word mass, you're dealing with a certain limitation.
Yep.
Not to say that we're catering to racists or homophobes or anything, but groups of people take longer to grow and evolve than one
Exactly.
person does, or a smaller group of people.
Exactly.
And there are shows like indie shows and LGBTQ centered shows and that have a
Mhm.
certain audience, and there also are, when I was doing the indies, spots that would work in Toronto and
Right.
spots that would work in Oshawa,
Right.
and
Right.
they're two totally different spots.
Yep. Yep.
And I would do the same thing in Toronto. I would get cheered, and in Oshawa, I would get booed,
Yep.
because they have their different communities.
Mhm.
And they have a different shared understanding,
Yeah.
and
And
you're hedging that bet and playing with it.
Well, and that's what's so interesting is that it's like the art doesn't change, but the audience does, right?
Yeah.
And finding out what's going to work is very much the I guess is part of your job is like how do you react to it in a way.
Yes, and it's trying to make an educated guess, and
Mm.
then also learning to react to the reality of
To
how
whatever
they
happened.
receive the choices you made.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
sometimes I was a little too clever and subtle for what we were trying to do.
Sure. I always see it as I think that's it's an element of what I love so much about wrestling is that it is very much to not to be insulting to the fans, but it's like it's lowest common denominator art, which
Yeah,
is what I love about it, and it also is like playing to the back of the stadium, right?
right.
It's why someone like a Hulk Hogan would be so popular because he always knew how to play to the guy in the furthest reaches of the room,
Yes.
which is fun, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just fun to just like yell
I
and wave
just
around, right?
Where was I? Kingston? Yeah, I think it was in Kingston. I was wrestling Hornswoggle, who
Okay.
is
Yeah.
is a little person.
Yep.
And I got on the mic and I said, now I'm not going to come out here and say the M word. And I realized no one knew what I was talking about. And I went, oh, they probably just say it and don't realize that there's anything wrong with it.
Yep. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
let's
I guess
just
I'm the good
adjust
guy
here.
tonight, right?
Yeah, who knows? We're not really sure.
Right?
Let's just make this one a little bigger.
Yeah. 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 RJ, have so many other questions that I wanted to get to, but I feel like I don't want to take up more of your time.
Go. You got a couple of them. You can ask a couple of them. It's
Okay, okay.
conservative.
Okay, okay. Well, I'll start just the wrap up. I really want to say like thank you. I think I got in my head a little bit about like about taking up taking up your brain space, and it's like it's it's you're you've got other shit to do, so I don't want to take up much more of your energy, but I do want to say like just thank you so much for coming on and just like jumping in feet first, like it really it meant a lot to me, so I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and I'm happy I did it. I went, oh, this will, again, I enjoy not having to talk about wrestling in a typical way.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
You
and that's
know,
what that was what like intrigued me about getting a guest like you on, was that it was like, obviously a massive wrestling fan, but I'm much more interested in, talking about my therapist, So
yes.
right? So and I really feel like one of the magic elements of pro wrestling is that it can represent anything you want it to. Like you can find anything you want in wrestling, and I think that there's so much uh people aren't realizing is already there in terms of these conversations of intimacy. You're talking about these wrestlers already they've known these things for decades, and it's almost like the audience is only just catching up to it, right?
Right. Well, we've also done a very bad job of communicating it,
Well, that's
and we
yeah.
also protected it for so
Yes.
long as
Yes.
probably beyond the point of reality. Um,
Yeah.
and I also sometimes think about uh, why do people go, oh, wrestling is fake, which we still deal with. And I
Yeah.
go, maybe that's because we spent decades telling people it was real. And when
Yeah.
you give them the either or, if we didn't say real, like you don't say that about a movie, you don't say that about a play, because a play is a play. They say
Yeah.
this is what it is.
Yeah.
You don't even say that about, like, I don't know, Chris Angel,
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
because he at least says he's, a mind freak. He
Yeah.
could have come up with a term like mind freak, and we would have been okay.
Yep.
But we
Yep.
insisted on saying it's real. It's real. And
Yeah.
that stubbornness has to go for us
Mhm.
to be appreciated by more people.
Mhm. And I think it's
Um,
turning around, because I think, I always see those kinds of things when you're trying to do like a pendulum shift, of cultural shifts or even internal shifts. You have to think about what the net zero is. So it's like if it's been, it's like if you're trying to reconcile your life and you're 35, you're going to be spending 35 years going forward just to get to net zero.
right.
Where so if you think about something like, the argument of wrestling's fake, it's like, okay, so that's, 60, 70 years, of
Oh,
sort of,
it's 100 years.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So like going back to the, the carnies and all that, right? So it's like you got a couple more decades probably to deal with it to get back to net zero. But I think
Yeah.
I think I think I think shows like AW are really helping push it along, and I think, and I really think stuff like what you're doing is helping push it along too. Because it opens up the back door of what wrestlers are really doing.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
one of my goals has always been to make new fans,
yeah,
to bring people back who were lost, who stopped watching wrestling, and to also convert people
yeah, yeah.
into new fans, because you want the business to grow and you want them to
Hmm.
enjoy the same things that you enjoy. And
Hmm.
so when people even say like, oh, I'm not a wrestling fan, but I watch your show because I like it and
Hmm.
it helps me learn about these people, then I feel like, oh my god, that's great. you
Hmm.
know um so yeah, I don't know, it's just about trying different stuff.
Yeah,
Really,
yeah.
it's the wrestling business. The worst things that could happen in the wrestling business have already happened. I can't see us doing any more damage than has already been done.
Yep, yep. Um, to wrap this up, this is a bit of a just like a uh, what's the right word for it? I don't know. This is a closer
Gestalt.
question. You're
Okay.
right. Thank you.
Sure.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
thank you.
I always really love to leave listeners on just like an actionable thing they can try out. So I'm curious, what is something that you would recommend listeners try doing to be a better friend to themselves or to, the world around them this week?
Oh my. Oh my. It's always like, I don't know. Sometimes I hate the blanket statements
Yeah.
because I'm like, reach out to somebody. But then there's some people, if they reached out to me, I'd be like, Jesus.
Get fucked, right? Yeah.
Not even get fucked, but I'm like, I don't even know if I can answer you right now. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I have the catch up in me.
Yep.
You know
Isn't
what I
that the
mean?
case too? Oh my god, when you get a text from somebody and you're like, "Oh fuck, I want to answer you so bad,
Yeah.
but I'm going to put my phone away." And then of course I'm going to forget to text you. So
Yes.
in 2 weeks I'll feel embarrassed about that.
Yes. Terrible. Um, I would say one of the best things I've learned is if you need to contact somebody and you need to say, "Hey, I need to talk to you. Can I call you?" Blah blah blah. Just saying like it's nothing bad, it's nothing urgent. That is like the
Yeah.
greatest gift you can give to someone.
Yeah.
I had a very innocuous question I had to ask to Aubrey Edwards, who was a referee at AEW, and I didn't want to type it out. I was going to see her the next day. So I texted her and I said, "This is just a reminder that when I see you, I need to talk to you, but it's nothing bad. It's nothing urgent. It's nothing remotely important. This is just a reminder. So when I see you, I'll go, aha." And she said, "That's so nice of you to
Mhm.
say it's nothing bad or nothing, but because I will get texts from people, please call me, please." And it is my
Oh,
mind is worse than any reality
yeah.
because I
My
probably
heartbeat
want to,
just ratcheted up.
yeah,
My heartbeat ratcheted up just hearing somebody else getting that text.
exactly. Yes, just boom. And your mind is worse than reality.
Mhm.
Always.
Mhm.
So if you could, the next time you need to reach out to someone like that, just say, everything's good. This is nothing bad.
Yeah. I
I just
love
need
it.
to talk to you.
I love it. Clarity is kindness.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Where do you want listeners to find you? And where do you want to what do you want to plug?
I just say you can Google RJ City and a bunch of things will pop up. Click around. Some of it you probably won't like, and that's fine. Also, if there is stuff you like, oh, tell me. I would be very interested to know what you didn't like and why.
Yeah.
Yes, but hey, AEW, every Sunday, crack of dawn, youtube.com/AEW. There's 98 episodes as of this recording that are out there right now. So there's like 20 hours of it for you to watch first.
Yeah.
So,
And
enjoy
there's a big
yourself.
master playlist that you can literally just start from the top and just work your way down. So
Yes,
it's
and watch me
yeah.
age in real time. It's
It's
great.
magic. It's real magic. Yeah. Well, RJ, one more time, thank you so much. This has been just an absolute treat. So I really appreciate it.
A
Yeah.
pleasure.
Thank
A
you.
pleasure. We'll never have this moment again.
No, it's
No,
gone. Gone
that's
forever.
it.
And that's it. Thank you one more time to RJ for coming on the show. What an absolute pleasure it was to interview him. The links to his show, Hey EW, are in the show notes. Be sure to check it out. I actually was at the AEW show this weekend when it was in town, and my voice feels like it's only now finally coming back. If you like this episode and you want more friendless content, please be sure to sign up for my weekly Substack newsletter. You're getting 5 distractions every week. These are going to be things like movies, music, TV shows, books, articles, YouTube videos, anything that I have enjoyed in the past week. There's also a curated poem of the week from my ongoing challenge to read a book of poetry every week this year, and a monthly curated playlist. more content is just around the corner down the pipeline. I'm going to be offering a new subscription service. There's going to be some digital products, some classes. There's going to be access to a live shows, as well as Discord channel, all kinds of fun stuff. I'm hoping to be launching real soon. I had the timeline of June. I don't know if it's going to happen, but we're going to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But that's going to be it for me this week. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope I will see you back here next week with a brand new episode. But you know what? I'm not going to worry about that right now, and neither should you, because that is then, and this is now. So for now, I'll just say I love you, and I wish you well. Fun and safety, sweeties.